Good evening. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to a special report of 60 Minutes in Black America as we talk about Selma, Alabama, and the upcoming 58th Jubilee in celebration of Bloody Sunday. Joining us in the studio tonight is Mayor James Perkins Jr. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good evening and welcome back to 60 Minutes in Black America as we have this special report tonight on the 58th Jubilee of Selma, Alabama's celebration of Bloody Sunday from 1965. Real special for me to be here and do this broadcast, very personal. I've had an opportunity to visit Selma, and I wanted to ensure that as I go back down to Selma this year, that I looked at it from a different lens, from a lens of the people, a lens of its infrastructure. I think we may all be aware of the recent tornado and the destruction that it did to the city of Selma. And we're Selma in that regard in terms of some of the repair. We're Selma in terms of some of the repair economically for its people over the course of the 58 years since Bloody Sunday. But where is Selma in regards to civil rights since the Civil War? Selma was a thriving town known as the Queen City of the Black Belt, and we'll ask Mayor Perkins what that meant to Selma and where Selma is. But first, before we get started with Mayor Perkins, I want to thank last week's guest, Darren Mohammed. Great discussion last Sunday. Normally we are a Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time show. And what a riveting show. And the hundreds of you out there, as I said last week, I'm not going to claim thousands and thousands, although we have several thousands every week, impressions and people that hit the site, people that go back and look at the show, but several hundred viewers from across the country. In the past couple of weeks, we've been in Oakland, California. We've been in Florida. We've been in New York. We've been all over this country carrying the news, which was the purpose of 60 Minutes in Black America, so that we as communities of color across this country can compare notes and share the true stories, our stories, as we tell them, so that we can look for that better day. But back to Selma, Alabama, and my inclination to host this show today so that before we descend, and I believe the Jubilee starts, it actually started, I believe, today with certain events, and it goes through Sunday with the culmination of the walk across the Pettus Bridge, as was attempted initially on Bloody Sunday and was thwarted by the sheriff of that county and resulted in, I believe, one death and dozens of people injured as they attempted to walk from Selma to Montgomery. And subsequently they did as Dr. Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, and other prominent white and black civil rights leaders from across the country descended on Selma, although it was not without trial that Dr. King was able to do so, because the first time they attempted with him, he called them off when he saw that the sheriffs were in a mood to continue to bust heads of black people and white people as well that attempted to march. It was only when I believe Lyndon Johnson, let's not forget who the governor was at that time. The governor of Alabama, I believe, was George Wallace. But Lyndon Johnson apparently signed an executive order saying that they were to, under federal protection, be allowed to walk from Selma to Montgomery. And, you know, the good thing is that we have Mayor Perkins here, who is a astute historian of this to straighten out anything that may not be exactly correct about this. But, you know, as I mentioned, it was important to me that I look at Selma from a different lens as I go down there, not so much from Bloody Sunday and 58th year anniversary, but Selma itself as a town, the people of Selma as people. You know, what is the town like? How's the town doing? How are the people doing? What is it that I, as an individual, what is it as we as a country need to do to uplift Selma, having suffered devastating tornado very recently, having gone through a downturn in population, other things and other factors. So looking forward to Mayor Perkins giving us a sense of where it is as well as a sense of their history. So let's talk a bit about Mayor Perkins. Was the president of the National Conference of Black Mayors, a national organization representing over 650 African-American mayors across the United States, And I got to tell you, this is one week where I think he is possibly the most popular mayor in this country. In my estimation, he probably should be every day of the year for what it is that he and his city stand for. He's also a director on the National League of Cities Board, a national organization representing cities and towns across this nation, headquartered in Washington, D.C., as well vice president for trade of the World Conference of Mayors, international organization collaborating with mayors, not only in America, but in the Caribbean as well as Africa. So the most important aspect of Mayor Perkins to me is that he is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Selma, Alabama, of which I will, God willing, be visiting, sitting in the pew with others, as well, that we're bringing along our journey on Sunday for his service. So let's bring Pastor Perkins. And I told him that I may make that, I don't call it a mistake, I just may make that distinction between him being mayor and saying Mayor, Pastor, Mayor Perkins. How you doing, man?
Mike, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you
Excellent.
so much for being here. It was so important to me that I speak regarding Selma, and even more so. And I got to shout out Don Taylor. You're a very astute chief of staff. I told her she was the assistant mayor for coordinating this. So Don, shout out to you for your passion about Selma, and you speak well for the people of Selma, Don. But thank you, Don, for arranging this to have Mayor Perkins with us. So Mayor, I told people a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit more about you in terms of, are you originally from Selma and how long you've been in Selma? And, you know, tell us a little bit more about you, family, grandkids.
Yeah. Well, I am a native Selmian. I was born here in Selma, grew up here, uh, got my early education in the Selma public school system, and graduated in the first fully integrated class of Selma High School in 1971. Actually, had the opportunity to attend the all-black high school, R.B. Hudson High, the all-white high school, Parish High. And when mandatory desegregation became law, I ended up at Selma High. We ended up graduating from Selma High School. Upon graduating, attended Alabama A&M University. I got a degree in mathematics, a concentration in computer science. So when I left the activist role of a youth, I was a student protester, 12 years old. I was one of the student protesters marching here in Selma. I was 12 years old in 1965, but students were heavily engaged in the marches. And in fact, after the lights were turned off and the celebrities went home after the March of 1965 marches, many of the students, those who were left, we ended up handling and dealing with all the desegregation of institutions, doctors' offices, movie theaters, counters. So I grew up as a protest child. But when graduating, went into corporate America, decided to become a computer programmer. So I was doing software engineering and systems integration work in the 70s. Did that for several years, owned my own business for 18 years, and decided to divest, get out, and to work with people and not systems. Little did I know that when I got involved in public service, all of that system skills that I developed over the years really came in handy, because really, if I had to really describe who James Perkins is, I'm just a professional problem solver. I like peeling back the onion to identify the problems, to isolate problems from symptoms, and to mine down and develop solutions. And so I guess that's the meat and the gist of who I am and what I'm about. That's sort of taking a long story, making it short, and taking the short story and make it shorter. So I'm going to stop there, Mike, because that's interesting. You started this conversation off with me talking about something I'm least comfortable in talking about, and that's me.
Hey, well, listen, that is what public servants and people that give back are always uncomfortable with. But you said something compelling, and we're going to delve into that a bit more a bit later, because we want to hear about some of the good stuff in Selma over the course of its lifetime to date. But you said when the celebrities leave and the lights are turned off, right? You said when the celebrities leave and the lights are turned off. And we just heard up north Tuesday that Joe Biden is coming to Selma on Sunday as well. And I gotta say, I hope that, I know when he went to Ukraine very recently, he took or continued to carry over there about $75 billion in USA. So hopefully when he comes to Selma, and we'll get into the particulars about Selma and Selmians. I think that's how you describe Selma people as Selmians, right? In terms of what it is that we can do to ensure that there's an effort grassroots when the lights go out and the celebrities leave, that we've left a better place and not just a mounds of debris, not just a higher police protection bill, and some of the other things that traditionally happen when we descend. But we'll talk about that. So let's talk historically about Selma for a minute, Mayor Perkins, because I understand that you understand, Selma, which was a very agricultural city, I believe. It was well endowed in cotton, and that's the reason why I believe it got its name, Queen City of the Black Belt. Now, people may feel on a 60 Minutes of Black America show, there's a correlation between Queen City of the Black Belt, Selma, and Black Southern cities, but it doesn't appear to be that case, is it?
Well, Selma is what technically you would call a micropolitan. We are a small city that's surrounded by a large rural community. And because of the geography and the demographic of our community, the economic development challenges in our community are different than they would be in a metro area. And we have to approach them differently. In addition to that, we are a majority minority community, 85% African American. Our poverty level is high. And so we have to make those kinds of adjustments as we move for development purposes. But I am convinced that Selma right now is positioned for greatness as never before. This tornado has opened up some opportunities for us. And I do hear you. I understood your opening statement about what is left in Selma when the celebrities leave during Jubilee. And I will tell you that the citizens of the community, we have been a little disheartened by that in the past. But let me tell you what's happened in the past couple of years. the past couple of years, well, let's just go back to my first day when I took office in 2020. And this is my second pass at this. When I
Yeah,
took office,
you were the first Black mayor of Selma in 2000, right? Weren't you the first Black elected mayor of Selma?
yes, that's right. I served for 8 years between 2000 and 2008. Was out of office for 12 years, and the people brought me back in 2020. And there are some reasons for that. Sometimes I say there was a method to the madness, but there are actually some reasons for that. But when you look at the strategy that we need to move our community forward, I was mentioning we have to actually take into account the challenges that we have based upon the dynamics and the condition of the community even before the tornado. Now, when I came into office in 2020, when I took the oath of office, my right hand up and my left hand on the Bible, when I dropped my hands, the first thing I had to do was to start cleaning up from Hurricane Zeta. The prior week, we'd just been hit by a hurricane, and we had disaster debris all over the community. These first 2 years, while operating in the middle of a pandemic, we've had to deal with cleaning up from Hurricane Zeta. And then now we are struggling with the challenges and dealing with what happened with this tornado on January 12th. Selma's economic challenges existed long before this tragedy that we've had. But I got to tell you, the support that we are receiving during this tornado recovery process is significantly greater than the support we received in 2020 when I stepped in to deal with Hurricane Zeta. I gotta tell you that, and just the fact that, and also if you go back and you look at Katrina and Rita, I was in office then. Some people say I'm bringing these storms with me, but Katrina and Rita hit while I was in office before. And even though it didn't hit Selma directly, we, being a sister city of New Orleans and of some of the Bay Area cities, we provided support, public safety and public works support for them. And so the table is turned now. It's our turn. Tuscaloosa was 2011. Now it's Selma turn, and the communities are coming together, and we really are getting tremendous support. But the administration, the Biden-Harris administration have been very kind to us during this process. They really have helped. I'm not really surprised that the president decided to come to Selma in this time and in this season, because I think Selma's soil. This is a place where that really is hallowed ground when it comes to the contributions that people of color have made in this nation. And I think people are beginning to feel and understand my appeals and my challenges that I am putting forward to people about it's time for Selma to reap the benefits of the contribution she's made to this nation. Selma has done more for this nation than she will ever be able to do for herself alone. And so it is imperative, it's important that our federal partners and our state partners, that they fully understand the challenges, the contributions, and the sacrifices that Selma has made, and help stand our city up the way it should. We are the Queen City because we are the largest city in this region. Black Belt not because of the people, but because of the soil that runs, that rich soil that really supported agriculture. But we've transitioned from agriculture to manufacturing. And recently we announced advanced ATC. Selma, my economic development strategy is moving us not to a business, it's moving us to an industry. And we're looking at the logistics industry. When I was in office before, Mayor Bright of Montgomery and I and several mayors across this region, we worked together to get Hyundai Motor Manufacturing in Montgomery. And a lot of people didn't understand, why was the mayor of Selma helping Montgomery get a plant? Well, because I knew that our infrastructure and our human capital was not sufficient enough to support that plant. But I also knew that we were close enough to actually get suppliers, first and second tier suppliers. And so as a consequence of the work that we did then, we were able to get Hanul Iwa, Lear Kung Shin, Renosol, 3 automotive suppliers. When I was in office before, Selma brought in 10 new businesses, 2,000 new jobs for a population right at 20,000 people. That is significant. Those are the kinds of things that move the unemployment rate. This time I'm working on trying to ensure that we get livable wages for our people. And the new recently announced business that we are looking at, Advanced ATC, they're putting in remote towers at Craig Air Force Base, what formerly was Craig Air Force Base. And Mike, what we are putting together in Selma out there now we will be the only system in the Western Hemisphere with the kind of technology that we're deploying in Selma at Craig right now. And so I don't want people to think that we are not moving, that we are not making progress, because we really are. And we will be training our people, local people, and people who will be coming into our community internationally and nationally on air traffic controllers. We are training air traffic controllers in Selma now. We are rebuilding our economy, looking at logistics, starting with aviation. Why? Because we got great airspace. We have a runway long enough to land a shuttle. We have the infrastructure in that space to do what we need to do. And so we're using it, we're building it. And I'm excited about where we are.
So Mayor Perkins, and no doubt about that, because of your relationships as the former president of the Black mayors of this country, your position as director on the U.S. cities, that you as an individual politician have been able to widen the lens of people's perception of Selma. Because when you look at the level of poverty, you look at the test scores. Last year, I was down and had an opportunity to interview Superintendent Williams from your public schools, and Dr. Williams, we had a good conversation. What is it that the people of Selma feel relative to not having, I noticed, and when I did more study, a grocery store, and some or a chain grocery store, a store other than a Walmart within the region, to ensure that their food needs, fresh food needs, are met, or the infrastructure rebuild? Because some people say, in certain sense, in Selma, in certain sense, economically, it's worse than it was before Bloody Sunday. And then you've had a shift in population as well. Is that an accurate statement when we talk to some Selmians about what's happening infrastructure-wise in the city?
Selma population was at its peak in the 1960 census.
About 28,000. What was it? 28,000 you had then?
Over 28,000 people. Between the 1960 and 1970 census, the voting rights movement took place. Bloody Sunday took place. That began a population decline. And between 1970 and 1980, Craig Air Force Base was closed.
You don't mind me interjecting. You don't mind me interjecting, do you, as you state some of these facts? So when you look at the population census during that period that you mentioned, was there a correlation on the economy of Selma as a result of it going from 72 or thereabout percent blacks to almost 85% blacks, or a flight apparently of whites out of the city? Was that some of the economic disparity that you suffered? Because you became the first Black mayor in the year 2000.
Yeah, the population decline originated with white flight as a consequence of the voting rights movement. But when Craig Air Force Base closed, that was a brain drain impact on our community. It took away a lot of professionals, and then by the time we got to 2000, when I took office, Selma had lost 8,000 people. I was in office for eight of the next 10 years, between 2000 and 2010. That census. During that period, Selma's population actually turned up. We were able to stop the hemorrhage and actually began growing again. The people decided they wanted something different, elected someone different, and we got difference. But in that particular instance, different didn't work well for us, because at the end of the day, by the time I was reelected in 2020, we had lost another 2,700 to 3,000 people. And so the people reelected me with the hope that we could restart that economic development engine, do the things that we were doing in education again. Because at that time, the only early college high school in the entire state of Alabama was in Selma. We had worked with Lockheed Martin, had worked with IBM, and we had actually initiated an early college high school. The only one in the state of Alabama was here in Selma. Our children were going to college and high school in dual enrollment programs and graduating with a junior college degree and a high school diploma. That was happening in Selma in 2008. The first graduating, early college graduating class at Wallace Community College, that college graduating senior with the highest GPA was a high school student. And so we were doing some things to actually turn the corner on what was happening. Apparently, some folk didn't agree with my strategies and my approach, because I can't be a little direct. I've got a little more seasoned now as I've aged, and I take a different approach to a lot of things. But I will tell you that
makes two of us. That makes two of us. Sounds like you and I are more alike than different, man. Got a little softer, huh?
Yeah, well, I have, but the razor is still there. I just don't use it as much. I had a college professor that told me one time that she gave me my first lesson in diplomacy, and her statement was, "Perkins, you need to take the razor out of your tongue." That's why I use that analogy. Yeah. So, some people just have that kind of impact on you, and Patricia Flowers was one of those folk that did that. But Mike, I'm gonna tell you something. Selma really is unique. And I know people say that about their communities. All communities are unique. Yeah, but Selma is not just unique. Selma is special. Because see, if you really have to go back, I saw one of your captions earlier, and you were talking about 1800s. And what people need to understand about the 1800s is the last significant battle of the Civil War was fought here in Selma. I want to say that again. The last significant battle of the Civil War was fought here in Selma. The only battle that's recorded that General Nathan Bedford Forrest, Confederate general, lost was here in Selma. That's the one that's recorded. And the Wilson Raiders came in and literally burned the city to the ground, with the exception of the area you'll get to visit when you come back on Water Avenue. It survived. St. James Hotel, those buildings on Water Avenue survived.
Beautiful hotel.
Selma,
beautiful hotel.
Yeah, Selma was important, though, because there was a weapons system, weapons manufacturing system, business here that was manufacturing Confederate weapons. And that was taken, and Selma was restored back to Union control. And when that happened, very shortly thereafter, the Civil War was over. What came out of that was the first African American to be elected to the United States Congress.
Absolutely.
Benjamin Sterling Turner came up out of those ashes. See, Selma will rise again. We are going to. And then if you look at what happened during Reconstruction.
Now, he was the first, but he wasn't from Selma. The second was from Selma, though, right? The second elected U.S. House representative was from Selma. ago, right?
Benjamin Sterling Turner, according to my records, he was the first African American elected from the state of Alabama. From the state of Alabama, he was the first African American to be elected to the United States, to the House, to the United States Congress from the state of Alabama. And after him, the next African
Jeremiah, I got Jeremiah Harrelson. Is that who it is?
No, I don't think we'd have to compare notes on that one. Because Benjamin Sterling Turner is he's buried here in Selma.
Okay.
He was up from slavery. In fact, he was
yes.
He was a former slave, but we'll compare notes on that.
Yeah, we will. But I think the significance is, Mayor, is that Selma, its rich history in terms of giving politicians all the way back to the Civil War, as you said, it's beyond Bloody Sunday. But you can go back and look at, it also had a significant lynching history as well.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. That battle was a ground zero experience for this community. And it ushered in the right to vote for people of color in this nation. And when you fast forward 100 years, you had the second ground zero experience to usher in the right for people to vote. And that was Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965. And so for a second time, Selma ushered in the right to vote for people of color in this nation. And I got to tell you that means something, because see, a lot of us who were around then, we are convinced, we believe that we lost Craig Air Force Base because of our participation in that movement, because of what Selma did in that movement. I am convinced that Selma has been punished for our contributions in this movement. And I am suggesting that we need to come off of punishment. There should not be a lifetime of punishment for our community at this point.
So Mayor Perkins, are you saying that you believe that Selma was being punished up until your second stint as mayor? That even when Obama's visit, you can't name any civil rights leader or president, with the exception of Trump and Nixon, who did not visit Selma to a point where they bought something, but you felt as though because of its history that it was punished up to very recently as 2020? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, and I am saying that a lot of people don't really understand our history, and if it's hard to wrap your mind around Deep South history if you're not living it. And what I'm saying to you is that there is a Deep South history that exists that really has caused a trauma to the people in our community. And until the nation recognizes that Selma citizens, the people, made a sacrifice. And what we have done, if you go anywhere in this nation, you will find people who came out of the Selma public school system, who were reared and born and reared in Selma, who are doing extremely well.
No doubt about that.
We produce great people and great citizens, but we have not been able to lift our community. And there's reasons for that. Listen, Mike, I'm gonna give you an example. Very shortly after I was elected in 2000, within 30 days, in the middle of a night, a bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest was erected on public property in the middle of the night. I had no knowledge of it. That was a sign. That was a signal. That was a signal to the community that we're not finished with that battle. We're going to put our general back on the ground in Selma, Alabama. You didn't.
So you're saying that a Confederate general was re-erected just 3 or 4 years ago? Is that what you're saying?
No, this was back in 2000.
When you were first elected.
When I was first elected, that's right.
The first black mayor. And they wanted to make sure, I guess, that you understood.
Yeah, that's right. That was in 2000. But what we were able to do then even was to to move that monument from the public space in Selma to the Confederate Cemetery, which is a tourist location. And so, but those struggles, those battles exist. Right? There are people, I am convinced, this is just me. I've lived this experience most of all of my life, but I am convinced there are people today who would like to see Selma's name erased from the map because of the contributions we have made to our people. And I just, my appeal, my passion before I leave this space is to make sure that people understand what Selma really represents in this nation. We're not a symbol. We're not a symbol of the struggle. Selma is the struggle. And when you emancipate Selma, when you lift Selma, that's the catalyst for the emancipation of our people in this nation. You gotta
take
your
Doctor, Mayor Perkins, and I'm going to interject again because, this is the exact reason what you just said, that we are here tonight so that when the world descends on Selma, including our president, that we understand that, because I believe what you're saying is symbolic of what happens in many communities around this country when we've had a participation in civil rights movement and that were punished. I look at Washington, D.C. after Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered, right? And the rebuild of that city, aspects of it that were historically Black communities that didn't happen for 30 or 40 years later when they begun to do some gentrification. And I'm sure there are other cities around this country that you can look at the same thing. But when you talk about Selma, Alabama, and you're watching 60 Minutes in Black America, we have Mayor James Perkins Jr. here. And Mayor Perkins, I've had the first African-American bishop for the Episcopal Church. I've had the third African-American governor on this show. This is possibly, to me, one of the more significant interviews that I have done. And you are probably, to me, the most significant guest when we look at the history of Black people and we point to Bloody Sunday and what it meant to this nation and this country. But we look at the ostracization of your community and your people, because I really want to understand what they feel and why they don't participate as in masses on a Jubilee. From what I understand, they don't. They told me when I am grasping hands and arm in arm going across the Pettus Bridge, chances are there was not a Selmian amongst me, right? And so are they in despair from paying the price that you just painted, but you've also painted hope that things are changing as a result of whatever. But what are the Selmians thinking and feeling as they're one of the more impoverished cities in the state of Alabama?
Well, I don't agree with the notion that there were no Selmians in any of the Jubilee marches.
Well, they said May. They said May.
I understand, but
I was.
Yeah, I understand. And there's limited participation, by Selmians, and I get that. And that's,
you're making that statement that there is limited participation.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think there is. And I suspect that everyone has their own individual reasons for that.
Economic reasons.
Well, no, I think
they see people come there every year and empty-handed. They've seen the vice president. Although you said the Biden administration, has been the most favorable one to you, but prior to that, they've seen no benefit.
Well, if you think about how Selma has responded to the recent outburst of racism and police brutality, you've not heard of protest in Selma. And I think the reason for that is...
You're talking about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and some of the Black Lives Matter movement You don't
Yeah.
see protests in Selma as you do in cities across the country, right?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
no, you don't. No, you don't.
Wow.
And I think there is a reason for it. I think Selmians are tired. We Selmians don't want to fight anymore. Selmians want progress for our future.
Could it
I'm
be that they're
convinced.
hungry? Are they hungry?
I think the
Economic
masses.
despair?
I think the masses of people are hungry, but there's also a challenge on hope. You have to have hope to actually move a people. And so we are. But I gotta tell you, we're Selma strong, and we're not gonna give up. We're not gonna quit. It's going to be okay. We're gonna be fine. But the goal right now is to get everybody to just understand that Selma is special, and we have to do the things that are necessary to lift this community, because this community represents uh, our democracy. It really does. Listen, everything that my wife and I, we have often, when President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle were in office, we could um, literally predict the next attack on them, because it was almost like there is some kind of playbook that was being rolled out, and we could predict it because it had happened to us. I was as a Christian, I was told that I was Buddhist. I was identified as not being a resident of Selma. All of these things that were happening to the Obamas had already happened to the Perkins. We understood it. We saw it happening. We saw it rolling out, and we just kind of said, you know what, this is really amazing. There is a playbook on this. I don't know how else to explain it other than what I've just said, Mike. This has been an interesting conversation. You pulled some things
Well,
out of me that I didn't plan on saying.
well, and I can appreciate it. I just want, one of the reasons for this, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, and I'm going to take it to me, that I give and leave more than I take. I always have the history because there's 57 prior to this Sunday that I have the reason to grasp. But when I go down there for the 58th, this Sunday, this Saturday, this Friday, today, when I believe some of the official ceremonies started, if we as a people can look at it from a different perspective and go down there and say, Mayor Perkins, people of Selma, what is it that we can do for you as a city so that you're uplifted as you should be as the epicenter of civil rights in this country? What can we do for you? Support the Voting Rights Museum and other historical points in Selma, because there's still some good stuff happening down there. Support you be in a food desert and ask Acme and some of these big companies to plant a food store down there in that community, whether it's a moneymaker or not. It makes no difference. The people need it. What can we do for Selma?
Many corporations are expanding across this nation. As they expand, I'd like for Selma to get a preferential look. Many retail outlets are shrinking and relocating and right sizing. And as they do that, I would like for them to take a look at Selma. Selma would benefit from a shopping plaza. You mentioned a grocery store. My vision for Selma expands, goes beyond a store. I'm looking for a shopping plaza. What Selma needs is I-14. If you look at the interstate system, you will see I-65 running north and south to our east. You will see I-85 coming in and stopping at Montgomery.
Yes.
you would see 20 coming from the west and stopping at the Black Belt line on the Alabama-Mississippi state line. 59 goes north and south past us. The real desert that we have is in highway infrastructure. We don't have that.
So it stops there, it doesn't go through, so that trucking and tourism, which I know you're pointed to, goes through your town.
That is correct. That is key to Selma's economic development. When Selma gets an I-14 where we can run from the West Coast through Selma to the East Coast, then Selma's economy will grow, because 85% of economic development in this nation takes place within 5 miles of an interstate exchange. That's the key. It has been systematically excluded from this reason. And even though we are looking at the cyber highway now, there still needs to be that highway infrastructure put in this community. And so when I do my ask, when I talk, you're pulling it out of me. When I do my ask from Washington, I want some asphalt. I want to come through here.
You know what, Mayor, and I'm going to switch, Mayor. I'm going to interject again, and I'm going to switch from Mayor to Pastor, to Pastor Perkins, right? I'm going to switch there so that people understand who you are in the total context of things, right? So you go and ask Washington, and you're going to have Joe Biden here. You've had Michelle and Barack Obama. You had Vice President Harris here. You're going to ask him, but us as a people have to stand behind you when we descend on the city, be it a letter writing campaign, be it signatures that you may gather, whatever it is as you convene. I have seen Ben Crump down there, met him. I have seen Jesse Jackson, our own very Reverend Todd Yeary. I can go on and on. Michael King, Dr. King's son. I have seen a plethora of leadership from this country down in Selma, to a point when we gather in strength, as they did with the 25,000 people ultimately walked from Selma to Montgomery. What does 25,000 voices look like when you have a community that needs to be uplifted, that is deserving as any in this country? What does that look like? What does the coordination of that look like? Because it's time, and we shouldn't be talking about a dream when it should be a reality for its people. So again, what can we do? Is there a strategy when people come to the Jubilee now to ask, beyond the Bidens and the Harrises and the Obamas, of the thousands that descend on Selma? What is the ask, Pastor Perkins?
Well, when I went to Washington this past year, I took with me a brochure that we had prepared showing the infrastructure needs for Selma and Dallas County. It was a consolidated document, water and sewer. It included city, county, our industrial park. The total dollar value of that was $500 million. It was $500 million. Wow. See, Selma is like the second, it's a debate, second or third oldest community in the state of Alabama. So our infrastructure underneath the ground is old, collapsing, corroded. And we are also in the state of Alabama considered a non-entitlement community. So when it comes to community development block grant funding, Selma does not receive money directly from Washington. We do not receive money from HUD. We do not receive money from Federal Highway. We do not receive direct appropriations from USDA. Those monies go through the state of Alabama, and we receive our community development block grant monies through a competitive bid process. And there's a limit, a threshold on how much you can actually bid for. That's $500,000 a year. There is no way for us to service $500 million of infrastructure requirements with $500,000 a year. It's just not going to happen. And so when I have asked Washington for, I'll just go ahead and put it out there because I've done this privately. I've asked Washington for $100 million for Selma.
When did you ask that? When did you ask that, Pastor?
I asked this last year. When I went to Washington, I asked for $100 million. And I even suggested is something. See, what I suggest to Washington is, well, they say, well, that's never been done before. I said, I know it, but you only have one Selma. No, it's never been done before, but it needs to be done here now. Because what I offered them is suggested was, give us a zero interest loan for $100 million and let us pay it back in 20 years. And let us just use the interest off of that to rebuild our infrastructure. That was my offer. I'm going to give you the money back, but let me just use the interest off of it to do the development. I thought that was a pretty sweet deal. But I'm not naive about the numbers. I'm not naive about the work that needs to be done and what it's going to take to get this done. But I am in the fourth quarter of this thing, and I'm operating from a sense of urgency. We don't have time or the luxury of putting this off. And so when I go in, I'm asking for the $500 million for infrastructure. I'm asking for cash flow support so that we can do the kinds of development we need. I'm asking for $100 million using the interest over 20 years. I'm asking for I-14. I'm asking for the big ticket stuff that we cannot do. And what I know about I-14, I know there's a senator in Georgia, Senator Warnock, who wants it. I know there's a Republican senator in Texas, Cruz, that wants it. And I know that the map right now shows that if they do what they want done, it will come directly through Selma. So all I want folk to do is start talking about it, put it on the agenda, put it in the state's master plan, and give me my interstate. That's what I want. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
It sounds like,
yeah.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful, Mayor. And I think that behind that weight as you go to Washington is the weight of the world that weighs in on Selma 1 day, 3 days a year, right? Understanding that this could be the power of example for communities similar to Selma without as much history to civil rights movement, that our voices need to be heard in this regard for you. And whatever I can do, because this is documentable at this point. We have documented this conversation and the need, hoping that people that visit Selma visit this and understand differently than the historical value of Selma. What is the future value of Selma to Alabama, to Georgia, and the related links? Because if you got those interstates going through, it takes you all the way to the Black people in California, which I'm sure some people from Selma came from. And I want to transition to that. You have some famous people that I was surprised. We have Gunnar Henderson that came from Selma, right? Gunnar Henderson, I don't know if you know of Gunnar Henderson. He is a phenomenal baseball player for the Baltimore Orioles, my favorite town. You aware of Gunnar?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is unbelievable, man.
Hit a home run the first up at bat.
He is unbelievable, man. We love him, and he's from Selma. And let's not talk about Mia Hamm. Where's Mia at? Mia Hamm. So when you look at the weight of those that come, those Selmians, right? The Selmians and the voice of the people that descend every year to what it is that your ask is, as a president of Black mayors, as a director on the board of the League of Cities, and the other voices that descend, is there a strategy to get to the power to uplift? If we can take $75 billion in less than 18 months over to Ukraine, and hey, let's not understand the strategic nature of what has to happen there, but also the strategic nature of what has to happen here. All you're asking for is $100 million. You'll pay it back. You just want to use the interest on it to build out the infrastructure. And by the way, why don't you finish some highways to go through here as well? I got to tell you, I don't think you're asking too much, Pastor.
I don't think I'm asking too much. I think that's a good ticket for the sacrifices that have been made. You asked about Mia Hamm. I got to tell you, her mother Stephanie and her father Bill They are still in Selma on a regular basis doing work in
Are they
education.
really?
Yeah, they really are. And I'm in regular contact with them. So that family has been good to Selma. In fact, my church will be we're working with them to do an education initiative this summer. So no, there are some folks that are actually doing some things.
There's some wonderful things. And Mayor, Pastor, I'm just so excited to call you Mayor and Pastor. We're winding down, got a couple minutes left. I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind giving people a sense of what this weekend looks like in terms of the Jubilee. And then I want you to have a couple of minutes to tell us and close us how you feel fit, either as mayor or pastor, because the word is never a bad thing for us to hear from a pastor and yet a mayor as well. So, what's happening with the Jubilee this weekend that people can expect in addition to Joe Biden walking across the Pettus Bridge?
Well, one of the things that's exciting to me is there'll be a forum on Saturday evening at Ebenezer Church. The theme of this forum will be Selma Opportunity and Invitation. It will be a panel discussion that will be seated by representatives from the Latin American and African American communities. We will be having a conversation about what our communities can do mutually to create a mutual benefit. What kind of things should we be looking at? And so that I'm really excited about that. Also, Congressman Clyburn will be the speaker at Ebenezer on Sunday morning. So I just, since you referred to pastor, I thought I'd throw that out first. Those are the two things that will be happening.
So who's going to be speaking?
Congressman James Clyburn.
Oh wow.
Will be the speaker at Ebenezer, and so we are looking for an exciting time at Ebenezer on Saturday and Sunday. There is a mass meeting that's going on right now at Tabernacle Baptist Church. That is the opening event. I think Dr. Bernard Lafayette will be present there. And all of the festivities, there'll be a lot of things going on throughout the week. Our challenge will be to give people an opportunity to get a feel of the disaster that took place and at the same time keeping the people safe and out of the way of those debris removal trucks and trailers that are still moving through the community. If you go into the downtown area of Selma, it looks that nothing looks disturbed. If you go north of the disaster area, it looks normal. But there's a path that's been cut through our city from the west end all the way to the east end of the city that really, it actually impacted 40% of our neighborhoods and left much destruction, mostly in residential areas. And so the important thing we got to do right now is strengthen our relationship with HUD, get that money for housing. We are working on that. We will be doing that. And then once we get that done, that infrastructure piece, I talked to you about the highway system. We need to do that. There are some things that are on the horizon. I am really excited about where we are. It takes some. I don't know. You may have been around long enough to know what priming a pump is. Sometimes you have to pull some water down in that pump before you can get some out. And so we've been putting the sweat equity in. And doing the relationship buildings. I'll tell you something, Michael. This is something that I'm pleased with as well. When we got that 100% declaration for reimbursement for FEMA on this tornado event, when President Biden signed that document, it took the governor, a Republican governor of the state of Alabama, to work with a Democratic president of the United States, two Republican senators, Tuberville and Britt, to work with Congresswoman Terry Sewell, a Democrat, we were able to actually pull together a coalition of blue and red, state and federal, to get what we needed for Selma in that crisis. And when the declaration was done, we were able to sign a memorandum agreement with the state of Alabama, and ALDOT used its contractors to do the cleanup of the debris. These kinds of things that I'm talking about have unprecedented things that have taken place. I'm a Democrat, but as a mayor, I'm nonpartisan. I don't run as a partisan politician for this office. It's a nonpartisan petition. You don't run on a ticket. And so, but we've been able to successfully navigate both sides of the aisle in the state and federal government, and we have been successful with it in these first 2 years. We got 2 more years to go, and we're going to see how it works out. But I am cautiously optimistic that you will see a difference in Selma.
Well, Mayor Perkins, I have to tell you, thank you so much for being here. And my prayer is that the perspective that you have given of where we are, because it was we back in 1965 as we descended on Selma for a right. And just as this Sam Harris has said, thank you for your leadership by example. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for explaining to us what it is that we can do to support. I look forward to seeing you Saturday, Sunday in church. I'm sure it's going to be an awesome time. And this has been a great conversation. But I'm going to give you the final word for the prayer of Selma, or the prayer of this nation as we descend on Selma. So Mayor Perkins, you got the final word, man, final minute of this broadcast.
Well, my final word would be this. For all of the challenges that we have experienced and that are coming our way, for all the opportunities that we've experienced and are coming this way, I simply say, to God be the glory.
Amen. Amen. Mayor Perkins, Mayor James Perkins Jr., the mayor of Selma, Alabama, as we look to celebrate the 58th Jubilee of Bloody Sunday. Thank you very much, Mayor. We'll see you this weekend. You've been watching 60 Minutes in Black America. We've been featuring Mayor James Perkins, the mayor of Selma. To me, the most important mayor, the most prominent mayor in this country, as he leads his citizens and his community through a continued atrocity, as we've seen in many communities across this country. You heard Mayor Perkins say that up to a certain period ago, he felt as though his community was punished and its people for its participation in the civil rights movement in this country. And is this what we're seeing in communities across this country? Does it mean that as communities, that we continue to have to come together to support each other and uplift each other, as we have to do with Selma this weekend? So it's not a matter of a Jubilee celebration, in my estimation, as we descend on Selma this weekend. It's a matter of ensuring that from where we stood in 1965 on Bloody Sunday, that we continue the march forward to opportunity for our people, and that the institutionalization of the concerns economically and the disparities are finally won, because we understand and we're hearing each other and we're seeing each other, that we share a lot more in common than we don't. So again, 60 Minutes in Black America, this has been a special on Selma, Alabama, and the 58th Jubilee. Thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend. And this show will be rebroadcast at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Central Time on these channels. Good night. Have a great weekend.